Like a lot of the new wave of political newcomers, Jennifer Christie isn't your typical candidate. She's actually a scientist. Whoa! And she's also a mom of four young children who's lived in the 5th Congressional District in Indiana for over 20 years. She's now running on a progressive platform in the Democratic primary for a chance to take on whoever the Republicans choose in this now open seat race in a district that, frankly, is a little bit leaning Republican, but as Jennifer says, hey, you never know. And Jennifer, it seemed to me that among the things that you are passionate about is, in fact, climate change. You separate that out on the front page of your website as a separate issue. And of course, you have a long line of other progressive positions on lots of other issues, and some of them we'll get to. And I wonder if some of your passion comes from being a chemist and biologist. So you actually know
Yeah.
what the heck is going on there out in the air. Is that what kind of draws you to that?
Yes, I would say, the reason that I became a scientist is my love of nature to begin with. And so I've always been someone who cared very deeply about what happens to our planet. And being someone who has worked in that field, I also am really in tune with that. So I keep up to date on what's going on and seeing what's going on from, even my own firsthand perspective. And indeed, it is the most important issue that we can be working on. It is imperative that we address climate change. And the good news is though, that we do still have some time, and it is one of those issues that when we come together to solve it, it is also our greatest opportunity. So our greatest test and our greatest opportunity for mankind.
So you graduated with honors from Purdue University in chemistry and biology, and also in mathematics. I'm intimidated a little bit by this because that was an area, mathematics, chemistry. I kind of just basically slid by in school and was just happy to get a passing grade. But more seriously, it seems to me that this must drive you crazy as a political person, as an engaged person, and as an actual scientist to listen to the debate from the other side, including your own home state, if I can say this, Vice President Pence, and that whole line of folks that are climate change deniers. That must make you want to tear your hair out.
There was a time in my life that I felt that way about that I felt frustrated with people denying and just not paying attention to the science and the facts. And that still, at times, I do feel that way. But what I've tried to do is to look at this from a human perspective, too, and to approach it with some kindness, because this is going to take everyone to solve this. I mean, when I say it is our greatest test, this is the greatest thing that humanity will ever have to solve. And to do it, we just have to come together to do it. We just have to. And so I try to approach people with kindness, understanding that not everyone has the same background. And there are sometimes things that people don't understand. And understanding is the first step sometimes. And I think the way to do that is to approach people with kindness, understanding that people will follow with their heart first before they will follow with their mind. So I think it's so important for us as scientists, as politicians, as advocates, as leaders to approach people with courage and kindness and understand that we can do this together. Because when we come at each other in a way that is abrasive, that's not going to bring anyone along. And we don't have time, honestly, to hash some of this out. We've got to get to work on solving this problem.
So I love this approach that you're putting out there about kindness, and it comes from obviously a huge amount of emotional intelligence on your part, if I can use that term. So let me play the devil's advocate here on 2 points to counter that this is solvable by kindness. Number one, isn't this in some way a huge cultural change that we have to make at 2 levels? The first is that really the climate change challenge, the crisis that we have on the planet, is really about people's desire, especially in the Western world and certainly in the United States, to continue to consume stuff the reality is that if we stopped buying stuff, that the planet would be in a lot better shape, because the more we buy, the more that requires corporations to use fossil fuels to cut down forests to feed people meat, and you just go on and on. So really, it's not just about kindness, it's really about a huge cultural change about what human beings should expect in terms of their impact on the planet, which means we have to stop buying stuff.
Climate change is, in so many ways, it's a symptom of our our habits and a symptom of our lives. And so we do need to be innovative and thoughtful about what we do to solve this. This will require an enormous amount of innovation. And some of that innovation is already in the works. A lot of it is not. And so, one of the things from a federal perspective, I think we must do is to fund innovation because it is going to take skills and knowledge and technology that we have yet to develop. And so we need to be very mindful of that. And also mindful, I think that you bring up a good point too, because the good side of this, and I have been an environmental advocate for my entire life, I always like to let people know what they can do personally. Because one of the things that I think happens with climate is the climate crisis is so big and it feels so big that there are people who don't talk about it because they feel like there's nothing they can do. You can do something. We can all do something. And so collectively, each decision we make, whether we make a decision to go with green energy with our household, or we make a small decision to just, maybe purchase things that have a lower carbon footprint or simply purchase less, whatever you can do yourself, multiply that times, millions and billions of people, and it does make a difference. But to solve this problem, we're going to have to go even further because we have come to a point where there's so much carbon in the atmosphere that it is going to require steps beyond our individual buying habits. It will take a massive amount of innovation to solve this problem at this point.
So the second part about the counter, if I can say that, to kindness is, to me, this is a lot about capitalism and about greed. And I'm not sure, and you'll convince me the opposite in a second. I'm not sure you can convince the fossil fuel companies, the CEOs, the people that are making huge amounts of money to just say, okay, we're going to go out of business. We're not going to do this anymore. And we are happy to then have this great green planet. Now, some of these fossil fuel companies, some of the big ones, are putting some money into alternative energies. But to me, that's a drop in the bucket, number one. And it really sidesteps the broader economic system. I know you're quite familiar with the exploitation of people because you point out on your website you have very progressive positions about workers' rights and the rights of people to make a decent living. But it seems to me that that goes along with the exploitation of the planet by big corporations.
Right. One of the things that you can do, if you look on my website, we actually have a climate agenda listed there. And in order to make big change, companies, businesses are can often do good things, but businesses are in business to make money, right? So they make their decisions with the dollar. And so one of the things I'm a proponent of is a carbon fee. And what that does is that puts a price on carbon. And when you do that and you have a monetary value or a tax on carbon, that changes behavior and it will change business behavior quite rapidly. And so that's one of the things that we have on our website in our climate agenda is that we support a carbon fee and dividend.
Mm. And actually, I printed out your 5-page climate agenda. I read it thoroughly. I encourage my listeners to go to Jennifer's website. It's jenniferforindiana.com. And that's actually what led me to start with climate change because I saw it very much highlighted on your website. And you do go through all those innovative ideas and the idea of basically building clean buildings and changing existing infrastructure. My only point is, yes, you can incentivize, and actually that's not a word, you can give incentives to business to try to change, but fundamentally underpinning the reality of climate change is right now, and I don't know where the arc is, where if you have two, since you're a scientist, you like to plot tables, and where's the point at which it crosses so that the greed and the system is not overcoming the efforts to try to make these changes. You know what I mean?
Well, I think a carbon tax really does influence that because when there's a price, when the true price of carbon has a value and is measured, that changes behavior because it has a cost, a significant cost to businesses. Um, Depending on how much you were to charge for carbon, let's say, I think if you did like, was it 15 per ton? I think it would bring in roughly $80 billion a year. And so there's some funds that you can use to then also invest in innovation that can help solve the problem as well. And businesses are always up for innovating. They're always up for, trying something new if it means that there's an opportunity. So I think that there's several things that we can do. We can price carbon, we can invest in innovation, and we can also stop funding fossil fuels as well. So one of the first things that is listed on our plan is to simply stop funding direct and indirect subsidies for fossil fuel, which are roughly $20 billion a year. So there's a lot of money right there that we could use to innovate and come up with solutions. And that's going to mean changing our energy sources away from coal. It's going to mean that we change our transportation. It's going to mean that we change our building codes so that we have greener buildings. Those are some heavy hitters in that. But I think there's even more that we can do. One of the things that we promote in our agenda, for example, is to help farmers to be a solution to this. Why not pay farmers to grow the best carbon sequestering mechanism on the planet, trees? Why don't we go ahead and pay farmers to do that? They can be part of the solution. So there's a whole lot that we can do when we come together and look at this problem kind of like we did with our space program, or when we tackled the Human Genome Project, or solved diseases in this country. Our country, really, we're best positioned to lead the world in this. And so I think we should take that opportunity and all come together from the private sector, from the public sector, and work on this and do it in a way that it brings people together. So I think that there are ways that we can inspire people because so far, when America has put our mind to something, we usually do it. And I think we can do this too. I'm hopeful. I'm approaching this with hope because the alternative is just too sad.
So do you see that hope also among the people that you are going out and talking to in the district that you want to represent? It is a +9 Republican district, at least generally speaking, how it's voted, although some of the elections have been a little bit closer here and there. And part of the district does include Indianapolis, part of Marion County, which is a little more Democratic. But certainly, as I looked at the map, it's very, for lack of a better term, more Republican, more red. But you obviously are campaigning there. I'm curious how people react to what you and I just talked about in terms of climate change and the specific solutions on how to address it.
Yes, this actually is an issue that does cross political boundaries. And specifically, the idea of a carbon fee is one that is supported by both Democrats and Republicans. And some of these solutions are also supported across political spectrums. So this in particular, I think it is the perfect thing that we must be working on. One, it's an existential threat that is the most imperative thing that we need to be working on. It has the capability of creating a lot of innovation and boosting our economy while we solve it. And it also has the ability to bring people together. And this is an issue that when I talk to people across the district from various political spectrums, they're concerned about it. And they're concerned about it because they have kids or grandkids, or maybe they're they just love nature. There's so many reasons why we have to do this. So I think it's a kitchen table issue that um, it transcends politics, and it should transcend politics.
One of the things I noted in your climate change agenda, which again, as I read thoroughly, was something that you wrote, which I often ask most climate change activists about and people who really care about this. They tend to say just loosely, oh, we're going to create millions of new jobs this way. And no one seems to actually underscore the notion that to have good paying jobs, you have to have unions. And you do point out in your climate
Yeah,
change agenda that as part of it, you want to invest in workers with project labor agreements and with unions, obviously. And that's not
yeah.
underscored enough, I think. I think a lot of Green New Deal folks talk, at least in general terms, about the need for unions for higher wages. But I think that people are dodging a little bit the actual numbers and what that means.
Unions are so important, and we just had a big strike in the UAW here in my district, and unions know that this is a great opportunity. Unions know that we need to be building unions up. That is good for America. It's good for working people, working families, and unions can be a big part of this solution. And so that can't be underscored enough, that we need to be partnering with labor unions to help get this done. Because if you think about it, you mentioned buildings, every single thing in your house itself, your car, everything needs upgraded. We have generations worth of work in front of us. And that's how we need to see this opportunity. We need to see that we have an imperative problem that is going to affect us for many, many years to come and affect our children and our grandchildren. We have a moral obligation to solve it. And the neat thing is, when we do it, we can help a whole lot of people while we do it. And so to me, this is not only a great opportunity, and can be very depressing, as you mentioned, to watch these things happen, to watch the mass extinction happening before our eyes, to watch the environments change. That is very depressing. So let's get up and do something about it. Let's all come together and do something about this.
So, a number of unions have been quite good about the issue of climate change. There are some unions that have had difficulty around this, especially working with environmentalist and Green New Deal advocates for this reason. And this is why I focused on your underscoring labor project agreements is oftentimes people talk about, hey, we're going to have these Green New Deal jobs, and they're going to be at least starting at $15 an hour, which is, as you know, the clarion call for raising the minimum wage. But that minimum wage is so low compared to what it should
Right,
be, even $15 an hour. And
right.
when you're talking to someone who's been in a union, you mentioned the UAW. I'm a proud UAW member, actually. And when you look at unions who have had really good contracts and really good benefits and decent working conditions, their contracts and their benefits are far higher than $15, even $20 an hour. So when you
Yeah.
say to them, come work with us, come potentially change your job, sacrifice your job, understand that some jobs in the fossil fuel industry are going to disappear in order to keep the planet healthy, there's a little hesitation there.
Right. That's understandable, because innovation often means change. But I have to ask, what alternative do we have? We really don't have another option. And so let's make the best of this. And the Green New Deal is a philosophical idea of achieving carbon neutrality, but doing it in a way, understanding that we are going to change our economy. And when we do that, there's going to be winners and losers. So we need to do it in a way that helps people and helps people financially. And so that is important to think about. And I'm with you on that the $15, I do support raising the minimum wage. But that even is, that's a very moderate start right there. And so we need to be doing even better than that. But you're right. One of the things that we can consider with this, and I don't want to change the subject too much, but healthcare is really important. And so one of the things I'm an advocate for is a Medicare for All program that I think would help a lot of people who spend an awful lot of money on healthcare in unions particularly, because what I've seen happen is that at the bargaining table, the health plan is often used as a bargaining chip. And so we need to be considering a lot of aspects of people's lives as our economy changes in solving these big problems like climate change.
So, last question for you. What have you liked about campaigning and what's been difficult?
I love that question. Well, I'll be really real with you. I love going out and talking to people about ideas and vision and hope. I think we need more of that in our country right now. And what I see from the grassroots in running a grassroots campaign is that there's a lot of hope. There's a lot of really good people. And that gives me encouragement to go each day. The challenge is, I have a family as well. And of course, it takes a lot of time to go out and campaign. And so that's been the biggest challenge. I'm a mom of four young children, and they have been just so amazing on our campaign. But certainly we've had to, shift some things around to make time for it. I mean, it's exciting. My kids absolutely love a lot of the things that we do, but I mean, they do ask a common question. They ask me now, is mom, do you have a meeting? And so they want to know, are you going to a meeting right now or not? And that is part of it. And I really had to think honestly hard about doing this because of being a mom. But issues like climate change I just can't, I'm compelled to do this. And the reason I'm compelled to do that is exactly the reason that it's challenging is my four kids. I look at them and I think at the end of my life, I cannot live with myself and think that I didn't do every single thing possible. This problem could cost humanity our survival, and it certainly will affect the way that they live. And I can't I have to do this. I have to. And it's because of them. So I understand when I go on a meeting when they don't want me to leave, I understand that they are actually the reason why I'm might, be gone when I'm not normally not gone.